After a lengthy summer's break, I am happy to welcome you back to the Innovation Room podcast. In this conversation, I was joined by Immanuel Nama to chat about corporate partnering, what it is, and how to do it right. Immanuel is an innovation consultant at Hype Innovation, where he focuses on startups and partnering, and he is responsible for the scouting side of the process. With a keen eye for emerging trends, he has had the privilege of spearheading Hype's efforts to identify and collaborate with some of the most promising startups in the industry in joint projects together with corporations. Until today, Hype has successfully delivered more than 350 individual scouting projects and found the best fitting startup solutions for any specific search field for their clients. So, if there is anyone to share valuable and interesting insights about corporate partnering, it definitely is Emmanuel. Hello, Manuel, and welcome to the Innovation Room podcast. I'm super happy to have you here today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine too. I'm really happy to have this conversation. But before we jump into the nitty gritty of the topic, can you tell us more about yourself?
Sure. I actually did my bachelor studies in with a cultural background in Passau, a little border town to Austria and Czech Republic. And that's how I ended up first time in China, where I stayed for 5 years, and also got in contact to startups, got in contact with a master's. I did my master's degree in international business there, and also started to focus on the side on fitness and health. So it's like three parts, maybe you could say. One is the cultural background, then you have the business part, and then this whole wellness, well-being. And how I got on this whole career path was more by chance, since I started at InnoSpot. Um, InnoSpot has been in the past acquired by Hype and is the startup scouting solution. And then I got more into the whole um, consulting side of things. Um, I think that's a bit of the story. And since 1.5 years, I'm in the Hype universe slash InnoSpot.
And what exactly do you do? What your position entails?
Yeah, so my position is entailing everything that has to do with corporates and startups and the bridge in between them. So it's all about finding the right fit, the right candidate. If a corporate is looking for a specific topic, and also further to build a successful relationship, build a successful partnership. So everything that has to do with this collaboration and partnering in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's today's topic, business or corporate partnering. So maybe a good beginning for this would be aligning our understanding of what exactly it means, what is corporate partnering, and what kind of partnerships even exist.
Sure. So what it entails, or what it is about, is pretty much at core that you have an established older corporation and a fast innovative startup. And at core, it's about the relationship and making it happen, where on one side, the corporate wants to get the agility, the creativity, the disruptiveness of the startup. And the startup also wants something from the corporate and gets resources, gets the expertise, gets maybe access to the market. And so it can be a symbiosis in an optimal scenario. Um, and what type of partnerships are existing? You could see a classic case of a corporate invests into a startup. This could be something, or the corporate has a venturing unit or an incubator even, where they run programs to support startups in early stages. It can be up to a product development that corporate and startup are collaborating on and co-creating on. So it can have all types of forms that a collaboration takes format. So this is maybe important to note, that there is a ton of different formats or ways how you could tackle this this topic. So up to an open innovation program, right? That's also something that we have here at Hype, where competitions are organized to identify the right startups. So it can be really, really different. Yeah.
There's quite a bit of a buzz in this area, like with big organizations, especially seeking these partnerships. But how do you ensure that it works at the end for all parties? How to really drive value of these partnerships?
Yeah. One thing that is highly important is the management of expectations, and expectations can be then seen as objectives. So both parties know exactly and clearly what this partnership is about and have aligned on it. Another big topic there is the fit of strategy. So um, there must be a basic alignment on some to some extent to some competencies. We can see that especially if the tech stack is not it's not fitting, then that can fail. One major factor is the communication, to stay transparent, to stay open with it. And also, this is one of the cruxes that I will talk about a bit later, since it's highly different how corporations and startups are talking internally and externally to each other. Yeah, I think these are some of the main points. You can also see corporates have to learn, from example, from the startups, the flexibility aspect, and the startups have to learn more the commitment aspects, maybe. And at the end of the day, you also want it all measured and then evaluated to see if actually this partnership is of success and you have created value or not. So this is how you should approach it. And on which is clear, but sometimes in reality it turns out differently, is that there must be mutual benefits and it should never be a compromise for one party. It must be truly a win-win for all of them, for this corporate as well as the startup.
And to achieve this win-win, is it ever obvious what type of partnership is needed or should be chosen in particular scenario, like whether it's an early stage startup, new technology, or something else?
Again, this is a question that can sadly not be answered that easily, since it's quite complex. There is no, okay, corporation A fits to all startups or startup A fits to all corporations. So there's different factors that we have to also take into account when considering this. One thing that's highly important is which stage of business are we at as corporation and as startup. To give you an example, is there are big corporations that are running their own incubators, their own accelerators. There's a lot of manpower already in this topic. And there's other companies that are quite huge in size, but they have a one-man show running it all. And there is just less resources, so you cannot establish an incubator, for example, but you could go into a pilot project, potentially with a business unit of yours. So this is one of the big factors. And well, it's coming also down then to resources and expertise, because if you do not have the in-house expertise as corporation to run certain things, you should not do it. Yet you can outsource them, right, to experts like us, who will then do the legwork for you. Yeah, this is definitely one of the big factors where you are in the journey. I already mentioned before the alignment on strategy level. So this, of course, is a must. And one point that's very important and that people tend to forget, but I really want to stress in this interview today, is the cultural compatibility. Since this is very, very important, it will have so many unknowns opening if there is no compatibility. So there's a must for at least some shared values. The vision must be common, and you have to pull or push in the same direction. And yeah, then again, I think you're on a good way if you have a check on strategy, if you have a check on resources, expertise, and if you have a check on your cultural compatibility, you're able to find a good way of collaboration with the startup. Also, what needs to be mentioned here, corporations are able, due to their size, to collaborate with different types of startups. So it doesn't mean only one type of partnership should be the partnership, the partnership type at a certain corporation. So you could run pilot projects and at the same time have an incubator, and at the same time have an open innovation campaign, and at the same time, and so on and so forth. So it's not very limited. And it should also not be limited to reap all the benefits to it. If you're just starting, it helps to maybe have a first look into the market and see what's out there, and start with that, with one step.
And you already mentioned a couple of these things like misalignment and cultural differences. But if we would were to jump a bit deeper into the challenges and risks associated with this, what are the most possible and most often happening kind of pitfalls? And maybe you have also some stories to share, some examples that we could learn from how to avoid those risks.
Sure. So there are many risks, since it's quite crucial, this collaboration between two very distinct parties. So one, what I mentioned before of alignment, if you do not manage to align and you have misalignment in your objectives, you will have a problem, because maybe commitment will lack from one side. The understanding of the partnership is not the same. So that's quite one of the bigger things. Again, and linked to that is cultural clash. So two cultures could really not work together. This could be, to give concrete examples, the wish of startups to get ad hoc answers, even at times where corporates maybe are not working, meaning maybe in the evenings, or this for the other perspective, it's quite bureaucratic if you start to collaborate with corporate. And for the corporate, from the other hand perspective, it's more unprofessional how some startups are dealing their things, because they just have to do everything, and they're three people, and they're building their tech product. So this can be one of the problems. Another thing, talking about tech problems, can be the IP protection. Of course, this is a must to be in a successful partnership. So the startup is not worried, and the corporate also is not worried. You can have NDAs. You can here have clear rights and responsibilities to tackle that. In some cases, which I mentioned a bit before, there's also a power imbalance, where you have this large corporation, this small startup, and you have one dominant party that influences the other, and not vice versa. So there's an imbalance, and it's not mutually beneficial, and it's also not the best outcome. Also not for the more dominant partner. So yeah, what always can happen is that you tend to partner with corporations that with startups that might do something very great, and it's also part of your business, or has been part of your business. There it's to avoid that any concerns of competition arise, since that's not what a win-win partnership should look like. I think important to stress here again with culture communication is really to get rid of all governance questions or decision-making questions. Who's doing what, when, and how are we dealing with conflicts? How is our decision-making protocol? And to have that clearly defined in our perspective, or from our what we have learned in those collaborations, that's actually the main chance of failing in an early stage when nothing even has been signed or done. And yeah, so I think communication is key, trust that comes with it, sharing the vision and sharing where you're going. And then all the rest is admin and legal stuff that you can then build around this core.
And of course, it's quite impossible to have this conversation without looking at the other side, like the small companies, the startups. So, because normally when you hear anything about corporate partnering, it's always how big organizations are investing in startups, looking for startups. But how does the small company can look for these big partners? Are there some kind of ways to create ecosystems or any kind of ideas on that?
Mm-hmm. So one point could be, or one idea could be, to actively go on networking events, on industry events that are in your industry or in your niche. So this will be one of the ways where startups usually also can find their the bigger corporations. Going for and actually taking part in a pitch competition or a challenge that has been many corporations are running these programs, and they want to identify the startups. So it's good also for the startup to actively look for those. Maybe they're in a different continent or in a different country. So that's quite important. Ecosystem wise, it's a real benefit if you can also sit, let's say, in a co-working space that is also exactly in your industry or in your niche. So you will just naturally find the people that are necessary. And also what I've learned from my perspective, actually, in a startup, is that if you are reaching out to the right people that are collaborating with startups, you might get successful. So people from the other side are looking for you and you're looking for them. If you can find this exact person, it's quite beneficial for you. So that's some of the ideas. Of course, you can also reach out to a corporate venture arm of a company and try to get in contact with them. So help them a bit, because their job also is to identify startups. It just helps here to be very, let's say, visible to the market in order to gain these partnerships. At the end of the day, it's also a lot of luck. So let's say you go to a big Paris conference, to Vivatech, and by chance you meet the person that you needed. So there's a bit of luck involved in this, and that's why you just have to keep on trying. And yeah, luck to get to the contact, and then more than that, patience, persistence, and be clear what you want and deliver to them.
I'm interested to know, have you ever, over these past years, when you work in this area, in this field, have you come across some misconceptions about corporate partnering?
Yeah. I think the most common one is like, it's not gonna work, because you have these two very different parties that then want to do something together. Ideally, and how to debunk it and how I've also seen it work, the people that are working in a corporate and are the link to the startups usually tend to be in a different way linked to the organization. So they are part of the organization, yet they are also the rebels in it. In some organizations, you see it very clearly if you have this one-man show that just tries everything. So they are innovators. That's the nice part. So that's also something to debunk. Task for the corporate is how can I find and attract this talent? And then again, how can you find and attract this talent is again by reaching out to startups, because that's the people that you need or their peers to be working for you. So I think that's one of the bigger ones. Like, okay, it's not going to work. It's too different, but it is working. So interesting enough also to say it's not working for everyone, because I've seen also programs where they are startup units that simply don't work. And from my point of view, I've seen the ones that do work have eased the corporate complexity to a certain extent. So yes, they're still in this whole corporate environment, but do you really need to ask 4 people if you want to buy from a startup? And if you're in that unit, probably not. And if you can ease that for your units and just make the processes a bit more easy, this could be a spin-off that makes things easier or things like that. But at core, to ease the complexity is, yeah, I think another hack to do it.
But would you say now, like from this point of view, would you say that more resistance comes from the corporate side because of the bureaucracy and how complex it is?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think it's just you have to imagine it's 2 people speaking 2 different languages. So the ones that are successful in this are the ones that can translate from one side to the other successfully, because sometimes you do maybe a signature somewhere as a corporate, and by the end of today, then you need a partner that actually will deliver what you need by the time you need it. And to make that clear and is major, and it would be even sad if a partnership would fail because of things like that. In general, well-working partnership that works on strategic levels, that would work on the partnership mode that has been chosen, that would be beneficial because the products are maybe fitting super well together. But then to have it fail because of the soft things would be quite, yeah, sad. That's why this has to be more a focus than it might seem to be, because just because of the products fitting, well, yeah, it's just 2 worlds clashing together. One is completely new work, and the other thing is more, well, the old work, right? That we all know. So yeah, I think to make that happen is focus on the soft. Yeah.
If we were to wrap up this conversation, I always like to ask the guest, what is the core message or core lesson that you really want the listeners to take away from this conversation?
Mm-hmm. It would be actually the importance of communication in partnerships. So it's the factor of success for any type of collaboration and any form of partnership. So this is actually at core of it. So yeah, again, prioritizing it, even though it feels like you should be better signing an NDA right now or doing something else. The focus on it is really the key to bridge the cultural differences between corporate and startups. And yeah, maybe to bring in cultural awareness is a first step. So to really understand their decision-making process, their communication style, how they work, their work dynamic, this will be good to anticipate on later problems. Then to avoid a clash, focus on cultural compatibility first and see, okay, is it nice even to work with this person? Is it fun even to work with this person? Basic questions like this, just because the product is good, maybe on a human to human level, there is no synergy. So you probably, this project won't be good. Then again, to not have any power difference and really be respectful and really be open is highly important, because it's a give and take. It's not one side is just giving. And then if you can make all of that happen, you can even start to learn from it. So you can integrate some of the nice norms, protocols, guidelines of the other party. And for the startup, it's the opportunity to level up and become more professional. For the corporate, it's the opportunity to become more creative, to get new ideas again. Because let's be honest, no kicker or no environment for employees is doing anything. Yet it's about the people, right? Like you can have the flashiest sofa, but maybe, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's a sofa, right? So this is the opportunity here. And then you can learn from it, you can adapt to it, and also become better in your efforts, because the first project will, when evaluated successfully, you can improve on it and learn how you can also, yeah, have partnerships in the future that work. I think, yeah, when we break it down, partnerships, just as anything else, is a communication case.
This wraps up our conversation, and I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you for this conversation, and I hope our listeners are able to take some lessons away from it. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you, Danara.